That's about as far as I got today. I'm sorry. Okay, so we are going to start at the election of 1800, I think is where this chapter starts, right? Chapter 10, I think starts the election of 1800. Okay, so the election of 1800 is kind of historical. It's kind of a big deal. It's the first ever election decided by the House of Representatives. And that's a big deal. Haven't done that yet. Although it happens a few more times throughout history. The deal is before this election, it was whichever dude got the most votes was president, and whoever got the second most votes became vice president. It didn't matter if they were from separate parties. It's just who got the most was first and who got the second most was vice president is how it worked out. It's not really a great plan, honestly, because then you have to work with somebody that you just ran a campaign against. Not really the best idea, but what they felt was the most fair. So after the election of 1800, you have Thomas Jefferson ties with Aaron Burr, and then John Adams has the second most votes. And so what they decide to do is Congress votes. And they, over the course of 6 days and 36 separate ballots, they vote to elect Jefferson as president with a lot of persuasion from Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton, he doesn't really mind Aaron Burr per se, but he feels like Jefferson would be a better president. And so he actively campaigns for Jefferson to be elected president, and he is. And it reminds me of that meme. You know that meme of, who is it? Michael Jordan? He says, and I took that personally. Okay, that's this. Aaron Burr takes that very personally and holds a grudge against Hamilton. And if you've ever seen
we saw the ending of Hamilton.
Yes, exactly. If you've ever seen Hamilton, you know how all that plays out. And your book goes into a lot of details, like 3 pages of the story.
A lot of my answers and responses are because of Hamilton. It's like, oh, I know this because I watched the Broadway.
You named him what? What's his name?
Oh no, I said a lot of like questions and answers and stuff. It's like, oh, who was the treasurer? Who was selected as treasury for all that? And I was like, yeah, it's Hamilton. I know that because of the one scene.
Because Lin-Manuel Miranda is a genius. I think that that play is just genius.
I answered a lot of exam questions because of that.
Yes, fantastic. I love it. I've seen it. You know what? I got Disney Plus just so I could watch it as many times as I wanted to while it was on. Such a dork. Anyway, but yes, fantastic. Okay, so that's how that plays out. When this all happens, Congress decides we need to figure something out so that this doesn't happen again. And so they pass the 11th and the 12th Amendments to the Constitution because the first 10 are already passed, and I hate that we need to talk about those. So the first 10 are the Bill of Rights, right? And then so 11 and 12 are the next ones they pass. And they basically set up electing president and vice president separately. Like you elect a president and vice president as a group from separate parties, basically is how they set that up, which is, of course, how we still do it. Okay, so Jefferson wins the election of 1800. Aaron Burr is his vice president, his first vice president, right? Because that's how it was set up before. George Clinton is his second vice president. I just think that's awesome. George Clinton was the second vice president. Okay, so it's a big deal because Jefferson is the first Republican. Everybody else so far has been Federalist. So he's the first Republican. Jefferson is he's a complicated man, incredibly smart, and incredibly well-educated. He reads a lot. He has a huge collection of books. In fact, there is a couple times in early American history, he watched the drunk history of it. Hey, that's good too. That works too. That'll work. You know what? Although there's a bit of language in drunk history, it's all historically accurate, which I love. It's fantastic. Usually I show you the drunk history about Dolly Madison and the War of 1812. I show that in my classes because it's awesome. So if you haven't seen that one, watch that drunk history too. It's really good. Okay, so sorry, I'm getting sidetracked reading your comments. Okay, so it's a big deal because Jefferson is Republican. Oh yeah, and he donated his library twice to America. After one time the White House is burned down, right, in the War of 1812. We lose a whole bunch of stuff, and then the Library of Congress is burned about the same time. And so twice in American history, Thomas Jefferson donates his entire library to the United States, which is insane. They literally came to his house, boarded up his bookshelves, and took his entire bookshelves back to Washington, took his entire library. It's pretty crazy. If you go...
So, sorry to cut you off. I have a stupid question on that. I wonder, like, because, God, how do I word this? I'm so sorry.
No, good, go ahead.
Did he have a full library? Because I know that it probably wasn't that much time in between. So he got a ton of books in a short amount of time to refill an entire library.
Yes. Yes. Is that not insane? That's how, like, he was really dedicated to reading everything. He had books about so many topics. The thing is, so if you go to the Library of Congress today, still, if you go to the Library of Congress, they have an entire section set up, and it is set up exactly like Thomas Jefferson had his library set up, in a circle, so that when you stand in the middle, you can see all of the books. Like, you don't have to go down aisles or whatever. It's just a big circle. And then you can get those books. You can't check them out of the library, but you can look at them.
He had a big library. Gotta look at the picture.
Yeah.
Sounds like my kind of guy.
So you can take those books and look at them. Oh, look, I actually wrote it down. Hold on, wait. 16. Okay, so 16 years ago, the Library of Congress started to try to replace the books that had burned as the original Thomas Jefferson collection. They have located 2,000 of the 4,000 they were looking for. You can check them out. You can like look at them and stuff. If you get them, if there's a green tag on it, that is one of the original Thomas Jefferson books. That's his book that he donated. If it's got a yellow tag on it, it's an exact copy, down to the printing and all that exact copy. But if it's got, if they haven't found it yet, it's a blank case with a red tag. It means they're still looking for it. So anyway, it's pretty cool. I think that I think that's so cool that he would do that. Okay. Anyway, Thomas Jefferson was a complicated man. I think that's where I started. I'm sorry. Tall for the age, 6'2", so about as tall as George Washington. They're both really tall, but a Republican, and that's new. So his campaign slogan was "Liberty, not power." However you want to interpret that. He was really big on states' rights, and he was really big on. He wanted the economy of the United States to be built on farmers, like small, everyday people, farmers, not big businesses, not merchants, not like huge businesses. He felt like the future of the American economy should be based on like the everyday people, essentially, and that's who the government should be focused on. He did not favor a standing army. He didn't think that it was necessary. He was more in favor of just a collection of militias, like each state had its own militia. So he felt like that was good enough. And when he becomes president, he cuts the military budget drastically so that most states have to rely on their militias. He cuts the standing army drastically to try to save money in the budget. Okay, So that's a big focus for him. He wants to reduce the size of the government. It's a big deal for him. Federalists had, up until this point, modeled the United States on basically England. We wanted a big Navy power. We wanted a strong army. The Federalists wanted to focus on these things, increase the size of the federal government, have a strong federal bank, and to use taxes to pay for those things, basically, as the Federalist plan up until this point. And Jefferson felt like it was too much, that we shouldn't be focused on so many of those things. We should be focused on farmers and the common people of the United States. So Jefferson is also the first president to ever be inaugurated in our new capital of Washington, D.C. So that's new. He didn't have any kind of fancy inauguration thing. I don't know if you watched the inaugural thing this year, the Biden inauguration, but it is a huge ordeal. It's a big ordeal. This one was weird. The one this year was weird because of COVID, but usually it is a event. Like it is a whole weekend event. There's parties and there's things to inaugural balls. There's like 4 of them all on the same day. It's insane. It's a lot of hoopla. And then the big thing is when they walk from the Capitol to the White House. Thomas Jefferson, instead of being taken in a big fancy carriage after his inauguration, he walked. He just walked there. It's not that far. So he just walked to try to show everybody, hey, I'm just a regular dude. I'm a regular old guy. And he didn't wear anything fancy. He just wore his regular clothes, all that sort of thing. So he just wanted to show everybody, hey, I'm just a regular Joe like everybody else, basically. Okay. No pomp and circumstance is how I think your book put it. Okay. The other thing was this kind of didn't extend all the way throughout his life. He was really famous for his love of wine and his love of food. He was a foodie before that was a thing, I think. So he spent roughly, I wrote this down because I thought it was interesting. He spent roughly $2,400 a year on wine in 1800s. So just think about how much money that would be now. That
much
was
again?
$2,400.
Oh God.
I mean, that's in $1,800. That was 10 times the average person's annual income that he spent on wine every year. So he liked wine. He also liked food. Thomas Jefferson is credited with bringing macaroni and cheese to the United States from France. So
Best president.
thank you. My children, I don't know what my kids would eat if we didn't have macaroni and cheese. We go through a lot of macaroni and cheese in my house, believe me. So thank you for that. That's cool. Okay. So Jefferson. There's also a big thing, you know, I say it's complicated. His big thing is he was always talking about liberty, right? Liberty over power. Wait, hold on. Do we blame him? Best president. Everyone else is bad. Don't even bring that girl. Yeah, great. So focus on liberty, not power, right? That's his whole campaign slogan. However, when he would talk about liberty, he only meant a very specific group of people, right? I think that was something that your book tried to stress in the last couple chapters. That what does liberty mean in this new country? Who does it apply to? Who does it not apply to? Who does it exclude completely? Those sorts of things. So he's talking a lot about liberty. However, Jefferson himself did own slaves at Monticello, the home that he owned. Actually, the house that he built, he was an architect as well. So he designed and built Monticello. But it's a working farm. It is still a working farm. If you go to Monticello and visit, they have a huge farm and seed collection. They're one of the United States recognized spots for, like, if there's a plague or something and our food is wiped out, you can go to we can go to Monticello and they have a seed bank to replant all this food. It's insane. Pretty cool though. But he had 150 slaves working at Monticello, and he had them until he died. So it wasn't like he ever changed his mind about that. But he was really big on liberty for some people, right? So our founding fathers are complicated dudes. They're like walking contradictions a lot of time. It's hard. Okay. The other thing is, I don't know if your book, I didn't see in chapter 10 at all where they discuss Sally Hemings. If she's in there, I didn't see it. No. Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you about it because I think it's interesting. Sally Hemings was one of his slaves. She worked for him for a long time. She was originally his daughter's friend, meaning his daughter's like caretaker, basically, like house caretaker. So she lived in the home with him. Also, Sally Hemings they're technically related, she and Thomas Jefferson. She is the half sister of his wife. So they had the same dad. His sister and his wife and Sally Hemings had the same father. So they're related by marriage. Okay. All right. So rumors during the presidential election, there were a lot of rumors about him having an affair with a slave. And he denied it, always denied it. However, totally true. It is totally true. He had an affair with Sally Hemings. They together had 6 children. Can't really deny that when you're having 6 children with this woman. Yeah, so they had six kids together, and only 4 of them survived into adulthood, and then went on to have children of their own. When he traveled to France, he took his daughter with him, and when his daughter came, of course, so did Sally, came with him to France. And while they were there, he was the French ambassador before he became president. He started having an affair with her. She was 16 and he was 44. So she lived in the main house as part of the slaves that lived in the home. It was a lot. They have proven that, of course, this is true because now we have DNA. So I think it was like 1998 or something. It's been a few years ago now. They did DNA testing on people and realized that, yes, they're the descendants of Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. So yeah, they had kids and he totally had an affair. She was rumored to be incredibly beautiful. There's only one picture of her, and it's a painting of her. And if that's any indication, ooh, she was gorgeous. Not that that's any reason that he should have had an affair with her, but gorgeous lady. Girl, I don't even want to say lady. She was 16. Gorgeous girl. Okay. All right. So again, more contradictions. These people are just, I don't know, contradiction on top of contradiction at this point. Okay, so like I said, he is a Republican. He wants to do all this. He reduces the size of the government almost to nothing. Like his first year as president, I think it said there's only 102 people in the whole executive branch, which is unheard of. Now it's like 50,000 people in the who work for the executive branch, but 102 or something like that. It's a tiny number. Okay. Your book talks about also Marbury v. Madison. It's a big Supreme Court case. The only reason really that you need to know about Marbury v. Madison is basically it establishes the idea of judicial review. That's the fancy term for the Supreme Court gets to decide if a law is constitutional or not, if it fits in with the Constitution as the Constitution is written. So they basically interpret the Constitution and say, yes, I think that's what they intended here. Or no, this law goes against what the framers wrote originally. That's kind of what the Supreme Court does, decide if things are constitutional. So Marbury v. Madison establishes the idea of judicial review. Nowhere in the Constitution does it give the Supreme Court the power to do this. It's not a power given to the Supreme Court in the Constitution. It was just implied that this is what they should do, or what they can do. And so we have been doing that. The Supreme Court has been doing that ever since. Marbury v. Madison is kind of the first one that really sets this whole thing up. So now if you take a case before the Supreme Court, that's basically what they're deciding. Is it constitutional or not? And that's all starts with Marbury v. Madison. Okay, that's why you need to know that one. Okay, so let's talk about, how much longer do I have? Okay, a little bit, just a tiny bit. Louisiana Purchase, that's a big one. That's kind of what Jefferson is known for. He buys Louisiana from France. He buys it from Napoleon.
Didn't they scam him?
Napoleon only wanted to get rid of Louisiana. They really only wanted to get rid of that one little spot. However, they owned all of that. So originally, when they go to make this deal, Thomas Jefferson sends his Secretary of State, and then Napoleon says, see if they want to buy Louisiana. And they get there, and the Secretary of State offers, how about we buy all of this land? And Napoleon is thinking, yes, buy all of that. Give us all of the money, because he needs it bad. They have been in a war.
I thought I read somewhere where they took advantage of him not being able to speak proper English. So that's how they got all that land. They didn't actually mean to trade it all, but they kind of like took advantage of the fact that he didn't understand what they were actually wanting. They're like, hey, yeah, this is ours now.
I mean, Napoleon spoke English. He was a really smart dude. He spoke English. So I don't know.
I could have sworn somewhere that they
I'll read it.
pretty much scammed him out of it.
I'll check that out. I don't know, but that would be funny if it were true. I don't know.
It's an American thing to do.
That's cool. It ends up being, let's see, I have it written down. Hold on. Okay, so when Jefferson takes office, 500,000 people, United States citizens technically, who lived west of the Appalachian Mountains across to the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River is vital to trade and, moving people, moving goods. It's hugely important to the people who live there. So we had access to the river when Spain owned it originally. However, Spain sells it to France. And so now we need access again. So we go to Napoleon, ask him, try to make a bargain for this land. Jefferson sends a delegation to negotiate in France with Napoleon. Originally, we only want he only wants to sell, and we only want that little bit of land, just Louisiana, so we have access to the port of the Mississippi River there. But Napoleon wants to sell the whole area, and so we buy it, we take it. It doubles the size of the United States overnight. With this one purchase, we more than double the size of the United States. Huge. It's a huge deal. Where's the amount? Here we go. We buy Louisiana from France in 1803 for $15 million in 1803 money. So that's a lot of money. 529,920,000 acres of land is what we have just purchased for $15 million. So doubles the size of America, guarantees, secures our right to the Mississippi River, because essentially we own that now. So all of that's ours. So $15 million works out to about 4 cents an acre. In today's dollars, well, when I wrote these notes about 5 years ago, so in 5 years ago dollars, that is $236 million. So honestly, not a bad deal. That's a decent deal, 4 cents an acre. You try to buy land now, it's at least $100 an acre. So that's a pretty good deal. When we buy Louisiana, of course, Jefferson wants to figure out what's there. So he sets up an expedition. He sets up a group of people to go figure out what's in Louisiana. And this is the Lewis and Clark expedition. Lewis is already his private secretary. He trusts him implicitly. And he knows that he used to work for the Army, so he can do it. He sets up the Lewis and Clark expedition. He selects a group of U.S. Army volunteers to explore this new Louisiana territory. So you've got Captain Meriwether Lewis and Second Lieutenant William Clark. They start on May 1804 and they come back in September of 1806. So a year and a half-ish amount of time. And they explore all the way to the Pacific Ocean. They don't stop at the edge of the Louisiana territory. They actually go all the way to the Pacific Ocean. They go all the way across.
Who explores it?
Lewis and Clark.
Okay.
That's
How did I miss that?
That's what you call them. The technical name for this trip is the Corps of Discovery. It's fancy. The history just calls it the Lewis and Clark expedition. So, okay. Mainly what they're trying to do is figure out what's out there. That's literally all they're trying to do. How many Indians live out there? What kind of land is it? Are there mountains? Are there good waterways? Is there good fishing? Is there good hunting? All this stuff, essentially.
Gold.
To get prepared for this trip, the group comes to Jefferson's home in Monticello and he tutors them in all kinds of stuff. Astrology, how to use sailing instruments, how to use those things, telescopes and sextants and compasses and all that, whatever. He teaches them basic medical care in case anybody gets sick. They got to take care of somebody on the way. Teaches them basic medicine. And what else? Astrology, geography, obviously, how to do that. And they're meant to document everything. So they keep really detailed journals. And they are at the Smithsonian. You can actually look at Lewis and Clark's expedition journals at the Smithsonian. And they are crazy detailed. It's really impressive, the amount of stuff they wrote in those things. They take gift baskets with them as like peace offerings for Native Americans that they meet on the way. No, they're like early Martha Stewarts. They take gift baskets with like, let's see, what do they have? Guns, gunpowder, knives, map making equipment, flags, and basic medicine in these gift baskets that they give to these Native American people as the tribes they meet along their way. Okay. They leave Camp Dubois in Indiana on May 14th, 1804. So they leave out of St. Louis, basically. It's where they start. You ever been to St. Louis? They got the big arch, right? It's what they're famous for, the big arch in St. Louis. St. Louis is called the Gateway to the West because that's where we started, the Lewis and Clark expedition. And that's the gateway that we use to go west and figure out what's out there. So they start in St. Louis, go all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It takes them a year and a half to go and get back, but they do it. They start out with 15 dudes. Only one guy dies the entire trip. Super impressive. I'm super impressed. Only one guy died this whole time. And he didn't even die of something like a gunshot wound or dysentery or something like that, or a disease. His appendix burst. That's him. So it couldn't have been helped anyway. Yeah, they buried him on the banks of the Missouri River and they named the town after him. So there's a town on the Missouri River called Floyd. And it's named after that guy. Isn't that nice? Okay. So they go all the way. On this trip is where they meet Sacagawea. Sacagawea is one of the most impressive early American women in history. I think I'm running out of time. What time do we get out of this class? Do y'all know what time I'm done? Because I want to tell you about Sacagawea, but I don't want to keep you too long. Does anybody know what time this class is over?
I think this says 2:05 on our actual thing.
2:05?
I might be wrong. I can go double check.
Yeah,
You're-
it's 2:05.
I was going to say your fellow students may just have gotten mad at you. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, time.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you very much. Because I want to tell you about Sacagawea. She is, she's tough, y'all. She was tough. Okay. So along the way on the Lewis and Clark expedition, they make contact with 24 different Indian tribes. They have a little trouble with the Sioux Indians. They almost get into a fight. They almost die. But they smooth it out in the end and they get to move on. They're traveling an average of about 14 miles a day. They average about 14 miles a day. So in the winter of 1804, 1805, they build a stopping, like they have to stop because they're in North Dakota in the winter. And I don't know if you've ever been to North Dakota in the winter, but it's like 10 feet of snow. It's ridiculous. So they have to stop. They build a fort. They call it Fort Mandan. They named it after the Native Americans who lived there, the Mandan Indians. And so it is near Washburn, North Dakota. Still there. You can go see it. It's a historical site. You can tour it. I don't know. It's tiny, tiny little thing. So while they're there, they meet a French-Canadian fur trapper, and his name is Toussaint Charbonneau. That's a French name. Woo, Toussaint Charbonneau. In fact, William, when I first saw your name, that's what I immediately thought of, because your last name is Toussaint, right? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that's what it
Yes.
Yes. Okay, there you go. Sacagawea's husband's name was Toussaint Charbonneau. There you go. Okay, so he and his wife, Sacagawea, she is a Shoshone Indian. He basically served as a translator because he had been a French trapper. He's French, obviously, but he's a trapper, and so he makes his money selling and trading with different Native American groups. So he speaks a lot of the languages. So does Sacagawea as a result of that. So when they first meet them, she is like 8 months pregnant. She's about to have a baby, like very pregnant when they first meet. They wait out the winter in Fort Mandan and then start off again. He leaves, Toussaint Charbonneau, leaves his wife and heads back to Canada to trap and sell and trade. He leaves Sacagawea with Lewis and Clark. She accompanies them on the rest of their journey. They ask if she can come, and she's like, sure, why not? She puts her baby on her back. Off they go. She literally just had a baby like weeks before this. She puts that baby on her back, and there they go. She's on this trip with them now. What? I don't even understand that idea at all, because I had babies. I had drugs. I got drugs with my babies because it hurts, y'all. It really hurts. And she had this baby with no drugs and then just decides to take a cross-country trip with them right out of the gate. No. I can't even imagine. Okay, so she goes with them. Basically, she goes with them more as a interpreter, not as a guide. I think most American history classes tell you that Sacagawea was their guide west. She didn't really know where they were going. They're going all the way Pacific Ocean. She had not been there either. So mainly she just comes as sort of a translator because she speaks the language, a bunch of languages. And kind of the key thing here is there's 14 guys. There's 14 dudes, white guys. And if they show up in an Indian village, 14 white guys with guns, maybe the Native Americans don't really know what they're doing there or their intentions. However, if you got a lady with a baby with you, you kind of look a little more peaceful. Kind of looks like you're not coming to conquer them. She was sort of their peace symbol, for lack of a better term, when they went to meet Native American tribes. So she spoke the language. She had a baby. You know, she doesn't look very threatening, basically, is what that was. Yeah. Moore's an interpreter. If you look at, there's money. Sacagawea is on money. She's on a dollar bill coin. But just about every statue or every picture of Sacagawea, she always has her baby on her back. So if you look at the dollar coin of Sacagawea, her baby's on her back. You can see him. By the way, his name is Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau. If you thought it couldn't get any more French. There you go. Okay, so she goes with him. They reach the Pacific Ocean in November of 1805. They camp out the Columbia River. It is a very rough winter. They vote on whether to stay, whether to come back. They don't know. During the winter there, they detail a lot. They write a lot in their journals, a lot of details about the plants and animals and landscape that they've come across. That's actually really helpful when they take it back to Jefferson, kind of figure out at least what all's out there. A lot of the guys got sick, but they make it through the winter. They leave the Columbia River. They leave March 23rd, 1806, make it all the way back. July 3rd, they cross the Continental Divide, head back in, across the mountains. They split into two groups to cross separately and then come back. They meet again on the Missouri River in August. And they sail back up the Missouri River, reaching St. Louis, September 23rd, 1806. So they traveled almost 4,000 miles in that year and a half, established contact with lots of Native American tribes, lots of information they gathered. They drew over 140 maps to give to Thomas Jefferson. They discovered and described 200 unknown plant and animal species. So pretty cool. Another weird fact, Meriwether Lewis dies in Nashville. He's shot and killed in an alley in Nashville one night. Nobody knows, it's unsolved. Nobody knows whether he killed himself or he was shot. He was shot in the stomach, which makes me feel like somebody else shot him. I don't know. Nobody ever was arrested or convicted of a crime. So, but he died in Nashville. There's a monument to him downtown Nashville from where he died. So I don't know. Okay. So Jefferson has a really interesting view towards Native Americans. Like I said, these guys are complicated. It's a complicated situation they have going on here. He viewed them very, what's a good word? He viewed them very paternalistically. You know what I mean? He viewed them as children, basically. He viewed them as they needed somebody like him, a white European, of European descent, cultured, educated, however you wanted to describe him. He thought they needed somebody like him to help them become more white, for lack of a better word. They needed to be more culturally acceptable in the new United States. He felt like they needed to adapt to what the United States was becoming. And they didn't want to do that. They had been living their lives in their ways with their culture for hundreds and thousands of years at this point. They didn't feel like they needed to change. Jefferson, his view towards Native Americans was that, yes, if you want to stay in America and you want to live in this country, then you need to adapt to how we are now, how we're making this country now, basically. He valued their culture. He thought their culture was fascinating and amazing. He valued their culture in so much that he collected Native American art and artifacts. If you go to Monticello, the first 2 rooms in Monticello, as soon as you walk in, is full of Native American artifacts because he collected them. He thought they were beautiful and amazing. He just felt like they were in the past and they needed to move on from those things. They needed to advance. Yeah, that's what, move on culturally, basically. He wanted them to assimilate into the new American society. That's what he wanted. To abandon their traditional practices, adopt Western agricultural practices, which, let's face it, how ridiculous is that? They basically taught the white people how to farm. And now the Europeans are like, hey, you should adopt our agricultural practices. What? I don't know. That one always got me. Okay. They wanted them also to adopt Western values and, of course, Christianity, religion, adopt more European gender roles, because remember, Native Americans had very different ideas about what specific genders could and should do and be. A lot of these Native American tribes were matrilineal, meaning that your name is gotten from your mother's side of the family, not your father's side. So whoever your mom, whatever tribe or people that your mother belonged to, that's your identity. They felt like that was archaic and it needed to be the other way, because traditionally you get your identity from your father's side of the family. So they wanted to change all that. They really thought that this, like the answer to this is Jefferson's thinking here, the answer to the Native American problem, that's his word, not my problem, is that they needed to assimilate. That's it. That's all you got to do. You got to assimilate, be more white. Well, they didn't want to. They don't want to do that. Some Native American people and whole tribes did. They did try to assimilate, just for the basic fact that they didn't want to lose more of what had already been taken from them. They didn't want to be moved. They didn't want to lose their land. They didn't want to die at the hands of the army. So they tried to assimilate, and a lot of them did assimilate. Some more European kind of ideas. However, a lot of them did not. They didn't want to. They didn't feel like they should. They didn't feel like they needed to. So one in particular, your book focuses on, so they focus on 2. They focus on Tecumseh, and they focus on Tecumseh's brother. I'm not going to attempt to say his name. You can look at it. It's very long, and I won't say it properly. So it starts with a T. You'll see it. His brother. So there is, the prophet Tecumseh's brother. I don't want to say his name. I'm sorry. He has a vision. He almost dies. And he has a vision that tells him that the Native American people need to reject all Western practices. Oh, sorry, my dog's outside. He was crying. Okay. Western practices and return to traditional Native American ways. He's slightly militant about these ideas. He's pretty hardcore in his ideas here. He joins with his brother Tecumseh, and they join these 6 different groups, Native American tribes, all joined together to fight off white culture. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, I got you. Is that what he was doing? Okay. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, sorry. That's okay. Thank you. Yeah, they're out there. Okay, so there is a situation happening here. Native Americans don't want to change. The government wants them to change. It's kind of a whole thing. It ends up turning into Tecumseh leads a pan-Indian movement. Pan-Indian just basically means like a bunch of different groups that consider themselves Native American all joined together in one group. So like when we have the Pan American Games, It's like all the American countries come together, you know, that sort of thing. Okay, so pan-Indian movement. They all come together against white people and white civilization. It intensifies after a whole bunch of treaties are signed with the Native Americans and then broken. We sign, I think, 16 in a row, and all 16 are broken pretty quick, one right after another. So the United States ends up taking roughly 3 million acres of land from the Delaware Indians all the way down into Indiana, the Potawatomi Indians in Indiana. So 3 million acres in total that we take from these Native American people. Tecumseh's not happy about this, and he gets his guys, they set up sort of a base camp headquarters at Tippecanoe to put down this Native American resistance. The government, the president sends William Henry Harrison. William Henry Harrison was at the time the governor of Ohio. And he had fought in several wars. He fought the French and Indian War. He fought in the American Revolution, and he had fought in the War of 1812. So he's already got a name for himself. He's already kind of known. So he goes to Tippecanoe. He leads a military expedition against Tecumseh in November of 1811. Basically, they wait for Tecumseh to leave. He leaves the group. They go in and they kill the Native American men who were there. They burn Tippecanoe to the ground. The village, the whole village. They go a step further. They not only burn down their homes, but they also set fire to all their crops. So even if they wanted to rebuild, there's no food. They scorched their fields. This whole scorched earth policy, they scorched their fields. So there is literally nothing left of Tippecanoe once William Henry Harrison is done here. They fought for a while. The Native Americans fought back for a while. They ran out of ammunition and they lost pretty significant amounts of land and all of their things, and people too. A lot of people died. After this, after Tippecanoe, Tecumseh enters into a formal agreement with the British. He asks the British for help. You give us guns, we want to fight the United States. Of course, the British are like, yeah, sure, get back at them. Let's do this. We're on your side, yes. So they enter into a formal agreement, the Native Americans, Tecumseh in particular, and the British kind of form a pact here to fight against the American government after this. Fun fact, William Henry Harrison uses Tippecanoe to run for president. When he runs for president, his campaign slogan is Tippecanoe and Tyler too, because John Tyler is his vice president. So he wants everybody to know, hey, I'm the guy responsible for Tippecanoe. And it gets him elected president. What? You're using the massacre of Native Americans to get elected president. And it worked. It works. He gets elected president on that. It's different times, y'all. It's different times. Okay, so basically all of this leads to a lot of tension between Native Americans, the United States, now the British. This continues to build. We're building towards the War of 1812. We're getting there. It's getting very tense in the United States. In the meantime, Jefferson ran for president again. He wins very easily. He runs against some guy named Charles Pinckney. I don't even know who that guy is. I don't know. He runs against Charles Pinckney. He defeats him 162 to 14 votes. That's pretty bad. So he handles all that, runs for president again. He wins. He can't have Aaron Burr as his vice president again because, you know, he killed the dude. He killed Hamilton. So he is no longer vice president. He does shoot Alexander Hamilton while he's vice president. I don't know. We've had Dick Cheney shot that guy in the face while he was vice president. I don't know. Yeah, right. Or he was whatever. Anyway, so I guess it happens. I don't know. It happens. But of course, he has not become his vice president for his second term. Second time he's got George Clinton is his second vice president. Okay, so what do I have here? Aaron Burr did all that. Okay, so his duel ends his political career. That duel ends Aaron Burr's political career. He is later charged with treason after the fact. He tries to raise an army. He doesn't give up. He tries to raise an army later in his life to invade Mexico. He wants to conquer Mexico. Jefferson pushes to try him for treason for that alone. The Chief Justice, John Marshall, at the time, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Marshall, said he needed 2 witnesses to convict him of treason. But they couldn't produce 2 witnesses to go against Aaron Burr. So he never gets charged. He gets off. He goes to Europe. Eventually, he returns to New York. He tries to start a law practice. He tries to practice law in New York, but everybody knows who he is. He's sort of famous at this point. So basically, he dies alone and very, very poor. It's a sad situation for Aaron Burr. Okay, why do I have stuff about impeachment? I have impeachment on here. Oh, they tried to impeach. They tried to impeach Thomas Jefferson at one point for high crimes and misdemeanors against the United States. That's the criteria for impeachment in the United States. So I know we just went through impeachment process stuff, right? Y'all have lived through 2 impeachment trials at this point, right? So the deal is, you guys have a way better understanding of what impeachment is than most of my former students. Impeachment just means they're putting you on trial. It does not mean they're kicking you out of office. Because I had so many people who are like, oh, he was impeached. He's got to leave office. That means he's guilty. No, that's not what that means. He was impeached. It doesn't mean you have to leave office. That just means they found you guilty of whatever they charged you with. Then they have to go and vote on whether to remove you from office. That's a whole separate event. And of course they didn't. Trump stayed in office. So that's a whole thing. That's how that works. There have only, let's see. There's been several impeachment trials in American history. Let's see. Andrew Jackson, Bill Clinton, Trump. They started to impeach Nixon, but he quit before they could impeach him. So he left office before he could be impeached. But nobody has ever been removed from office. All of those guys, they found Clinton, they found him guilty of perjury. He still stayed in office. Andrew Johnson, found him guilty, but he needed a 2/3 vote to be kicked out of office, lost by 1 vote. So he got to stay in office. So nobody has ever actually been removed from being impeached, but we've had presidents before who've been impeached. But nobody's ever been kicked out of office yet. I don't know. Maybe that time will come. I don't know. Okay. At this time, France and England are still at war. They're at war again. Napoleon's army is dominating on the on the European continent. Napoleon's army is insanely good. But the British Navy is dominating the seas. So they're kind of back and forth. America does pretty well financially during this war between the British and the French because we provide goods to both sides. We stay neutral and we sell stuff to both of them. So we do really well during their war. The British take offense that we are selling goods to the French. They don't care for that. So they start boarding and seizing American ships if they see them, taking stuff to the French. They board and they seize our ships. This starts the practice of something called impressment. Like, I'm so impressed. Yes, impressment is what that is. Basically what they're doing here is they're forcing sailors to join the British Navy. They're taking them off American ships and forcing them to join the British Navy. They claim they can do this because these guys are of British descent. So technically, they're still British and they should work for the British Navy, right? Even though they're United States citizens, I mean, United States has only been a country for less than 10 years at this point, 20 years at this point. So technically, you're still British. So you should work for the British Navy. That's how they get away with this, or that's the reason they give. From 1803 to 1812, like the years this is happening, the British Navy impress 6,000 men, American soldiers and sailors. In 1807, the British warship fired on an American ship called the Chesapeake. 3 Americans are killed, 18 are injured. Jefferson calls on the state governors to call up their militias. Like, he's getting ready for what this means. He thinks this is about to be war, right? Because they have actively open fired on an American ship. So he calls for them, get your militias ready. It's roughly 110,000 men in the collection of American militia groups. It's a lot of dudes. So he calls them all up. Okay, get ready. He's hoping to avoid a war, so he tries to work out some sort of peaceful deal with the British. His strategy basically is he comes to something that he calls it peaceable coercion. Like, he's nicely trying to make you do something, basically, is what he's trying to do. Okay, quote, our commerce is so valuable to them, the only price we ask is to do us justice. Basically, what he wants is for them to allow us to continue to trade. Don't fire on our ships. Let us continue to trade. We will not go to war with you. Basically, his offer. They set up something called the Embargo Act, 1807. No ships to either England or France. We won't trade with England or France. Try to pressure them to respect the neutrality of the seas. Basically, what we're doing here is Jefferson says, if you won't let us trade with France, we're not going to trade with you either. We're our own country. We're independent. We're not a part of this war. We should be able to do what we want. We should be able to make money however we see fit. It's best for us. So if you're not going to let us trade with them, that's cool. We won't trade with you either. See how that goes for you. See how you do that. It doesn't really work out well for them. So it also does not work out for the United States. That is really bad for our economy because now we're not trading with either France or Britain. So we've lost a ton of money in trade here. American exports fall from 108 million in 1807 to 22 million in 1808. So we lose a lot of money coming into our economy. It's really bad. The election, the next political election happens, 1808 is the next presidential election. He doesn't run again. Jefferson doesn't want to run again. There's nothing that says he can't. He could totally have run for president again. The thing is, Jefferson did not enjoy being president. He didn't like it. If you go to his grave, on his tombstone, it says statesman, architect, author, father. Like, it's all these things are listed. All his achievements are listed. President is nowhere on that list. He didn't want it even included that he had been president. He did not enjoy it. And he did it twice just to serve his country because he loved his country. That's what he said. He felt like he owed his country something and he could do a good job, but he did not enjoy it at all. Washington had only served 2 terms. So he felt like, okay, it was good enough for Washington. It's good enough for me. I'll serve my 2, and then I'm going to go back to Monticello, live out the rest of my days. which he did. That's exactly what he did. So 1808, we've got Republicans are split over who should run for president next. Thomas Jefferson chose Madison, but everybody else chose James Monroe. So we have a split. We don't know who's going to run for president. The Republicans hold a caucus. They decide Madison would be the president, and he was going to be the choice of the party. So they're putting Madison in there. Madison wins eventually. He wins the election. The thing is, when he comes into office, it's not great. The economy is tanked from where Jefferson signed that embargo. The economy has tanked. So he inherits the embargo from Jefferson. Neither France nor England had changed their opinions on trading. So that's not doing anything. It really hurt the North's shipping industry. Port cities who depended on trade. Congress is incredibly upset about all of this. So they elect a committee to try and negotiate a settlement with them, with the French and the British. So Napoleon sees all of this happening, and he totally uses this to his advantage, to drive a wedge between the United States and England. He uses this. He promised he would honor the neutrality of the seas, but he told the British that America is being unusually harsh towards them. You know how you like get in there and like, oh, they're being so rude to you right now. What are you going to do about that? That's what he's doing. Also, he blames Americans for moving into the Ohio territories. He says they shouldn't have done that. They don't own that yet. They only have the middle part here. Shouldn't be moving out there. And he blames the British for investigating India attacks in the new area, right? So he sees that the British they have a deal with the Native Americans. He's trying to play them off of each other to work to his advantage, basically, is what he's doing here. Okay. Last thing, this is the last thing I'll tell you. It's James Madison. James Madison is our shortest president ever. He's only 5'4". So he's from Virginia. He's known as the father of the Constitution because he's the guy that came up with the Virginia Plan. His wife, Dolly Madison, is one of, historians agree, she is one of the best first ladies ever in American history. She was very good as a first lady. She's incredibly smart, very well educated. She spoke several languages. She was a really good host. She threw a good party. Apparently that's important if you're first lady. So she sort of sets the standard for what a first lady should be and do from then on, essentially. Okay, so we have Madison as president now. We're about to start the War of 1812. All of this, embargoes, impressment, Indian troubles in the West, their deal with the British, all of these things come to a head and end up, this is the beginning of the War of 1812. So, I'm not going to talk about the War of 1812 now. I'm tired. That's a lot that we just covered. A lot. Okay, so yeah, I know that was a lot of stuff. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, $50,000 a year on wine. Yes, that sounds about right. 2,400, 1,800 to now, $50,000 a year on wine. You do too. You spend $50,000 a year on wine. Woo! I need to come party with you. Nice, awesome. I can't afford it. I have children. A COVID budget. Nice. All right, you're not going anywhere. What are you spending your money on? Wine. I get it. I totally get it. I get it. Okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions before we go? Or do you have questions about what you're supposed to be doing for this week? You have a assignment, you have a quiz, and you have a discussion both for this week. and then a movie to watch. So I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions? We good? Okay. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I appreciate it. And I will see you, what's today, Monday? Yep, I'll see you Wednesday. Okay. Bye, guys. Have a good day.
Have a good one.
I have a question.